All right, so we're diving into the world of Paul McCartney.
Oh, a deep dive into Paul McCartney. I like it.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? Even down here in Uruguay, everyone's buzzing about his concert in Montevideo.
Yeah, it's not every day a Beatle, let alone a living legend like him, shows up in Montevideo. Really shows you his influence, you know?
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Decades later, and he's still selling out stadiums all
Mm.
over the world. But to really get this, we got to rewind, go back to the beginning. Liverpool, 1942.
Okay, so picture this. Young Paul McCartney, born right in the thick of World War II. His dad, a fireman, off serving during the Blitz.
Wow, so his dad wasn't really around much then.
Not really, no. Those early years for McCartney definitely shaped by those times, you know what I mean?
Heavy stuff for sure.
Yeah.
But music still found its way in. His dad was a trumpet player.
Yeah, and a pianist.
Really? So those genes, they were passed down.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And while young Paul's parents, they wanted him to take piano lessons, you know, the formal route.
Of course.
He was drawn to, like, teaching himself other instruments by ear.
That's so interesting. Like, even then, he wanted to find his own way with music.
Exactly.
And speaking of doing things his own way, the man's a lefty. Any guitarist will tell you that flips your whole world upside down.
Oh, yeah. Instead of, you know, restringing the guitar like most lefties do, he just flipped it over.
Really?
Yeah. That says a lot about his independent streak, something we see throughout his entire career.
And all the while, soaking up influences. Little Richard,
Kelvin?
Paul,
Holly.
all pioneers, right? Left a huge mark on him.
And here's the kicker. Years later, McCartney buys the entire music catalog of Buddy Holly. Talk about a power move. I mean, that goes way beyond just being a fan.
Right.
It shows you the immense respect he had for Holly and his smart business sense,
For sure.
securing his idol's legacy and making a pretty savvy investment along the way.
Speaking of legacies, we can't talk about Paul McCartney without mentioning the elephant in the room.
The Beatles.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. What always gets me is how he chose to forge a whole new path after...
He could have easily just, kept riding that Beatlemania wave.
Oh, totally. Could have formed a supergroup? No problem.
Instead, he went a totally different direction with Wings.
Yeah, Wings' early tours, they were a far cry from those sold-out stadiums,
Yeah.
small venues, college gigs.
Really?
Oh, yeah, they even drove their own van for a while there.
Can you imagine going from Beatlemania to that?
It shows you just how much he wanted to explore musically.
Total reset.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, those experiences, that rawness, probably fueled his writing even more.
You think so?
Oh, I'd bet on it. My Love, Live and Let Die. Those songs came from that time, each with its own story.
And behind the scenes, the story kept going. After Brian Epstein, the band's manager, passed away,
Yeah.
McCartney kind of stepped into that leadership role.
Definitely a void there, changed the whole dynamic.
Makes you think how all those internal shifts, the personal stuff, influence their music.
Oh, absolutely. Every song, it's like a window into their journey together.
Layers upon layers.
Exactly.
It's funny, most people, they think of him as the bassist from the Beatles.
Right.
But he's so much more musically, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking multi-instrumentalist here. Bass, guitar, piano. Right.
He even played drums on some Beatles tracks.
You're kidding. I never knew that.
Oh yeah, the man gets around musically.
So he just moves effortlessly between instruments. So impressive.
Always exploring new sounds, pushing those creative limits. Like take his experimentation with tape loops.
Tape loops.
Yeah, where you record a sound, put it on a loop, and just play around with it. Create these cool textures and rhythms.
Okay, yeah, I get it. It's like that hypnotic sound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know who he got that from? Avant-garde artist John Cage.
Oh, right, John Cage. Didn't he like to use unconventional sounds and stuff in his music?
All about the experimental approach.
Yeah.
McCartney was totally drawn to that.
And it wasn't just tape loops or avant-garde. He did orchestral works, even electronica with that project, The Fireman. See, that's what I mean about range. He goes from orchestral scores to electronica without batting an eye. It's incredible.
He's got an appreciation for it all.
He really does, and I think that's a big part of why he's still relevant. Never wanted to be put in a box.
And it goes beyond music too, right? He's a visual artist too.
Oh, yeah. Back in the 80s, he really dove into painting, had exhibitions and all.
Wow, exhibitions. I had no idea. Do you think those different outlets, they feed back into each other?
Oh, for sure. The creative process, it pulls inspiration from everywhere.
Right. Like maybe painting gives him a new perspective, then influences his songwriting.
It's all connected. But, it's not just the art with McCartney. It's his activism, too.
Oh, totally. He's been a vegetarian since, what, the 70s?
Mid-70s, yeah, big animal rights advocate. He and Linda, they campaigned a lot together.
Really shows you what he believes in. Using his platform to make a difference.
Exactly. And, on a more personal level, he's also into transcendental meditation.
Wait, seriously,
Mm.
he meditates?
Oh, yeah. Learned it from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, that guru back in the 60s. Remember him?
Vaguely. Okay, see, this is what I love. Every time we talk about him, there's something new,
Right.
like this well of fascinating experiences. And this is random, but I heard he's a big football fan too.
Huge. Though nobody can really figure out which team he supports.
Well, come on. It's got to be one or the other, right? Everton or Liverpool?
You'd think. But he's played it close to the vest. Supported both at times.
And maybe he's just a fan of the game itself.
There you go. Diplomacy at its finest. But speaking of relationships, we got to talk about his collaborations.
Oh, yeah. So many great artists.
Really? From Stevie Wonder to Michael Jackson, even Kanye West and Rihanna these days.
Seriously, that blows my mind. He just connects with everyone.
It's amazing, right? Transcends generations.
Totally. But obviously the big one, the one we can't ignore, John Lennon.
Oh, absolutely. That's a whole story in itself.
Definitely complex, those two. So much creative energy, but also those clashes.
It reminds you that even the best partnerships have their challenges, right?
For sure. It's interesting because their last phone call, right before John died, it was apparently really positive. Must have been some comfort there in those final moments.
Yeah, you can only imagine. And you can really feel that deep respect he had for George Harrison, too. That tribute concert when he played something on the ukulele.
Oh, man. So powerful. You could just feel the emotion.
It really drives home those bonds. Forged in the heart of the Beatles.
No doubt. It always gets me how McCartney's collaborations, they go way beyond the Beatles, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, even Kanye West and Rihanna.
Right. Spans generations.
It's mind-blowing. So, okay, let's zoom out for a second. We've got a musician who can play anything, an artist in multiple mediums, an activist, a businessman.
Don't forget, one of the wealthiest musicians in the UK.
Oh, right. And on top of all that, he's still selling out stadiums, headlining festivals, a living legend, no question. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. We've talked about his music changing, but what about him as a person? He's gone from the cute Beatle to, like, this elder statesman of rock. How do people connect with that across generations?
That's a good question. I mean, for the people who grew up with the Beatles, it's that nostalgia factor. Their music, it defined a generation.
But what about the younger crowd? The ones who weren't even born when the Beatles were around? What's the draw for them?
I think it's a few things. The music itself, obviously. Those melodies, they're timeless.
True.
And being a Beatle, that carries weight, even now. But he's also still out there making new music, working with current artists.
He's not just coasting on past glory.
Exactly. And that resonates, I think, especially with younger generations, that drive to keep creating, keep pushing forward.
It's like he's a link to a different era of music. Before digital everything, when an album was an event.
There's a magic to that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you can't discount his personality either. He seems so genuine, so down to earth, even after all this time.
Exactly. Still relatable, even with all the fame.
Still just Paul, the music lover from Liverpool.
At his core, yeah. It's inspiring.
It really is.
Yeah.
Different generations, they might see different sides of him, the music, the history, the man himself. But it all adds up to this incredible career.
Absolutely. It's why he's still relevant.
It makes you think, how has your own view of Paul McCartney changed over time? What speaks to you most about him, his music, his life? Keep those questions in mind. Until next time, happy listening.